In India, a major industrial tragedy has struck the Visakhapatnam Steel Plant in Andhra Pradesh. At least 10 people have lost their lives. Several others have been seriously injured after molten steel spilled during operations, triggering a massive fire inside the facility. Authorities have launched rescue efforts. Prime Minister Modi has expressed grief on the mishap. A routine work shift turned into a devastating tragedy at the steel plant. The fire incident occurred after a container carrying molten steel reportedly malfunctioned inside the plant, leading to a catastrophic industrial accident. According to the preliminary information reportedly, a ladle carrying tons of molten metal became dislodged while being transported, and moments later the container crashed, causing molten steel to spill across the work area and trigger a massive fire inside the steel melting shop. The intense heat and flames left several workers trapped, with many suffering severe burn injuries. Emergency teams, including the plant's fire department and multiple fire engines, rushed to the scene and launched rescue operations. Several injured workers were shifted to the nearby hospitals for treatment. A number of them remain in critical condition. Meanwhile, the Andhra Pradesh Chief Minister expressed shock and grief over the incident. The Chief Minister spoke with the district officials and directed all departments to coordinate rescue, relief and medical assistance for the victims and their families. Prime Minister Modi also expressed condolences, calling the incident deeply saddening. The Prime Minister's office announced relief of 2 lakh rupees from the Prime Minister's National Relief Fund for the families of each deceased worker, while those injured will receive 50,000 rupees. Former Chief Minister Y.S. Jagan Mohan Reddy also conveyed his condolences and demanded a comprehensive inquiry into the accident, stressing that worker safety must remain a top priority. The tragedy also reviving painful memories of a deadly explosion at the same steel plant in 2012, when 16 workers lost their lives during a trial run at an oxygen plant. Authorities are now investigating the exact cause of the tragic accident. Is Xi Jinping quietly endorsing North Korea's expanding nuclear weapon stockpile? That is the big question hanging over Xi's high-profile visit to Pyongyang. In fact, North Korea rolled out the red carpet for the Chinese leader. Kim Jong-un drove to the airport to receive Xi Jinping. Xi and his wife were greeted by Kim and the North Korean First Lady upon their arrival in Pyongyang. And what followed was a full military parade that was organized in Xi's honor in Pyongyang. National flags of both sides flew across the capital. Giant portraits of the two leaders dominated the cityscape. However, the official agenda of the visit still remains unclear, but both leaders are slated to hold a summit to further strengthen their ties. This 2-day visit comes just weeks after Trump's visit to Beijing. The Trump-Xi meet in Beijing last month stabilized US-China ties and restored dialogue between the world's 2 largest economies, especially after the tariff and trade war last year, remember. But Xi's visit to Pyongyang could be worrying for Washington. The US and North Korea, remember, have been adversaries for decades. They are also considered arch rivals, the center of that tiff being North Korea's expanding nuclear program. Just days before Xi's arrival, Kim Jong-un visited a newly inaugurated nuclear materials production facility. He declared that North Korea would continue rapidly expanding its nuclear arsenal. Kim Jong-un boasted that the country's weapons-grade nuclear material production capacity had more than doubled over the past 5 years. So the timing of Xi's visit cannot be discredited, of course. It comes at a point when Kim Jong-un is also openly celebrating the expansion of his nuclear capabilities. And Beijing has always maintained that they want denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. But in international politics, it's not about leaders, what they say. It's about what they send out through messaging, the posturing. The image of Xi Jinping standing shoulder to shoulder with Kim Jong-un just days after the North Korean leader vowed to expand his nuclear arsenal will inevitably trigger questions in Washington as well as South Korea, who have raised alarm over the nuclear agenda of their neighbor all this while. In fact, China also, the so-called endorsements towards North Korea, the messaging, becoming even more relevant considering the depths of the China-North Korea relationship. China is North Korea's most important economic lifeline, after all. It accounts for the majority of its official trade. As international sanctions continue to isolate Pyongyang, its dependence on Beijing has only grown. Trade between the two sides has remained robust and has risen sharply in the early months of this year itself. North Korea relies on China for just about everything, from fuel, food to machinery, electronics, vehicles. Chinese ports and companies also serving as critical gateways for North Korean exports to reach global markets. Beijing historically possesses the most leverage over Pyongyang because North Korea relies on China essentially for up to 95% of its trade, reportedly. So this is why Xi Jinping's visit there is also being watched very closely, because at a time when North Korea is expanding its nuclear capabilities, Xi Jinping has chosen to publicly reaffirm its ties with Kim Jong-un. A new dangerous chapter has started for West Asia. Will the hours and days ahead see resumption of war or a peace deal? That's the big question. And as of now, there is a fine line separating the two. But who really holds the key to that answer? Who is really calling the shots? Trump claims he does, but Netanyahu has once again defied him. And while the number of times Netanyahu has defied Trump keeps shooting up, along with the tensions in the region, is Netanyahu the one actually calling the shots as Trump fails to rein him in? And will Netanyahu defy Trump once again? The region has witnessed that dangerous escalation with Israel and Iran exchanging strikes. U.S. President Donald Trump demands that Israel and Iran immediately stop shooting. This came after attacks that threatened to wreck the U.S.-led efforts to broker a deal to end the war. So the timing of that escalation has been crucial. Israel hit a petrochemical plant in southwestern Iran that it said was used to produce ballistic missiles. Iran's IRGC, meanwhile, said they retaliated with a strike aimed at a similar Israeli facility in the city of Haifa. The exchange followed Israeli strikes on strongholds of Iran-backed Hezbollah in Beirut over the weekend. Remember, Tehran has repeatedly said any deal with Washington to end the conflict must include a halt to Israel's campaign in Lebanon. In fact, an Israeli military official reportedly said on Monday his country was prepared for a range of options in Iran from several days to as long as it takes, adding that it had struck Iranian air defense systems that were being rebuilt after previous Israeli attacks, as well as the petrochemical plant. An Iranian military source reportedly, quoted by the Tasnim news agency, said Tehran was prepared for a prolonged conflict with Israel and for renewed strikes against U.S. interests in the region. And what does Trump have to say? Earlier in the day, he posted this on Truth Social, I'm quoting, both sides, Israel and Iran, are looking to do an immediate ceasefire, final negotiations on peace are proceeding, subject to ignorance or stupidity getting in its way. The blockade will remain in place and in full force and effect until a final deal is reached. Things should move quickly, quote unquote. That is what the US president said earlier in the day on the platform. So while Trump is declaring final negotiations on peace are proceeding, he admits it is subject to what he calls ignorance or stupidity getting in its way. This, of course, is not the first time we are hearing such words from the president, and he is once again sounding optimistic in spite of the volatility the region has seen in the last 24 hours, both on the ground and otherwise. But is this once again an attempt to show everything is under control? What really is happening behind the scenes? Let's also tell you about a report earlier by NBC News. The Pentagon is increasingly concerned about Israel ramping up its spying on the US, recently raising the counterintelligence threat level from Israel to the highest level. The report says the Pentagon's Defense Intelligence Agency in recent weeks issued the new counterintelligence threat assessment amid the rising tensions between Israel and the US over the way forward in the war with Iran. The level for Israel, according to the report, has been raised to critical, and the designation reportedly stemming from concerns within the Pentagon that Israel is making a particular effort to surveil top US officials to get information on the Trump administration's internal deliberations and decision-making on the conflicts in West Asia. All of this coming at a time when questions have been growing over where things really stand between Trump and Netanyahu. From Trump's earlier heated call with Netanyahu, where he reportedly used strong words to lash out at the Israeli leader, Trump has insisted he is calling the shots now. But the fact is that he felt the need to declare that. And that only adds to the growing questions about how much control he really has, because Netanyahu has defied him once again, and his repeated defiance has been viewed by analysts as a way to try and jeopardize attempts to arrive at a deal. Will he do that again, and will Trump be able to arrive at that deal with Iran, or will the region hurtle towards an escalation, or will there be resumption of war? As the world watches on, a lot depends on the answers to those questions. To stay up to speed with the latest news, download the WION app and subscribe to our YouTube channel.